edition of Pure Picks. I'm your host, James, and we're here to break down UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Nascimento in St. Louis. Before we get into that, I wanted to get into some results from UFC 301. Overall, we had a great night as a group, as you guys can see here for UFC 301, plus 8.1 units on the day or night, 101% ROI. Really proud of our group for our efforts this week. And obviously, our Discord members were able to cash on some of these plays. Obviously, we had the big dog of the night with Anthony Smith. Good parlays overall. Just really proud of our efforts. Now, from this list, I wanted to go over some of the personal plays that I had. Obviously, Anthony Smith was my biggest underdog of the week and turned out to be true. I was on Petrino early in the week, changed my bias throughout the week, just given some new information that I gathered, and was really glad that we were on the Smith side of things. Plus 350, really good value there. Kevin Borjas, mistake by me. I discounted the fact that Costa was going to be the much more physical threat on the feet and on the ground. Even his leg kicks were doing damage to Borjas. So one miss right there, obviously, and I'm going to take that into account in the future. Mauricio Ruffy and Pantoja parlay for plus 123. That was a really good play, in my opinion, in regards to Pantoja. Very close fight. You know, I could see Urseg winning that decision, but it's good to be on the side of the Brazilian champion in Brazil in that case. And I think that overall, that was a really sharp play by us. Mauricio Ruffy, that guy looks like the Brazilian Conor McGregor. So I'm going to keep an eye on that guy for sure. And he could be in other plays depending on the matchup, obviously. But I think that he's going to be a special person in the lightweight division. Drakkar Klose, Lucindo Bonfim for plus 126. That'll be the last time I'm playing Drakkar Klose personally. That was a very close fight. A bit of a sweat for that parlay. Obviously, Lucindo and Bonfim were locks in their respective matchups. Fight does not go the distance for a unit and a half. Major L by me. I was really trying to fade the odds boosters that they had on Bet Online. Usually those odds boosters don't play out, but 2 out of the 3 odds boosters actually played out. One of them was, I believe, Jose Aldo by decision, and then the other one was Pantoja goes the distance. So obviously we were on the wrong side of that. Going forward, I'm probably not going to try that again just because it worked out in the past, but this is one of the few times that didn't work out. So I'm probably just going to stay away from that. I think Bet Online has been catching on to some of these fading for the odds boosters. Orobai, obviously, I parlayed him with Lucindo and Bonfim. I thought Orobai looked like a lock aside from gassing. I think he won that fight 30-27, even with that point deduction or whatever. So it made it 29-27. But regardless, up 5.19 units for my own personal plays, 74% ROI. Going back as a group, I want to look at this. We started tracking plays since November 2023, and we're up 9% so far. So it's been about half a year, give or take. Straight picks have been going great, 18%. Parlays, 11%. The one area that we see here that we need to improve on is the props. We have minus 11% there. So really need to key in on those props, but we're doing pretty well overall as a group. I think this is just really important. I mean, tracking plays on BetMMA tips shows us that we're, consistently putting in work, getting positive results, and just staying consistent for our pure pickers. To check out some of these plays on, Discord, obviously, be a Pure Picks Pro member, guys. I mean, it is very much a good value, $10 a month. You get all of our plays, all of our insight and analysis. I think it's one of the better values in the space, and we're gonna keep on trucking, no matter the hate or the love. We're gonna keep on coming out here and trying to provide plays plus EV picks for you guys. So Pure Pickers, we're gonna get ready to rock and roll for this week. Now, Lewis versus Nascimento. I think this is going to be a pretty good card, actually. A lot of the prelims have good fights. Main card has had some good fights, too. And I think there's going to be some advantageous spots for us to pick some good EV plays right now. So I wanted to move on to breaking down the card. Once again, I'm going to try to do a quick picks kind of style. So I'm aiming for about a minute or so for each fight. So let's get into it. First fight that we have is going to be JJ Aldrich versus Veronica Hardy. So I think this is going to be a pretty close fight, and I'm leaning towards JJ Aldrich as the dog. I mean, as you guys see here, plus 118 right now. Hardy is minus 138, open up at a plus 165. So already kind of interesting line movement there. I'm leaning towards JJ Aldrich. Once again, like I said, this is a dog or pass fight, in my opinion. And I understand why people took dog odds on Veronica Hardy, because I do think that this is going to be more of a pick 'em odds kind of fight. And throughout the fight, I think it's going to look like that. Now, JJ Aldrich, I think that her speed is going to be something that is going to propel her to a close decision victory. If you guys watch the fight between Hardy and Jamie Lynn Horf, Jamie Lynn Horf was having a very hard time keeping up with the speed and the quickness and movement of Hardy. Hardy does a really good job of darting in and out with her shots, and she also has a good grappling base, obviously. I think that JJ Aldrich has enough of a stand-up game and grappling game, obviously, and the size advantage as well. She's a slightly larger girl here. I think she's going to be able to have enough speed to, keep up with Hardy. At least she's not as fast as Hardy, but I think she'll be faster than Jamie Lynn Horf. And if you guys saw in the third round, Hardy was slowing down against Horf, and Horf was able to use her size to clinch up, cage push. I think that JJ Aldrich has the skill set to actually do that. So I think it's going to be a very close decision fight. The over 2.5 is minus 450 right now. I don't think there's much value there. And yeah, I think the over 2.5 at minus 450 right now. I don't think there's too much value there. Both of these ladies have been finished in the past, and I don't know. Even though I think that it will be a close decision fight, I feel like there's not a lot of value at minus 450 for that over 2.5. So I personally would stay away from this fight entirely, but it is going to be a dog or pass fight for me, so I'm on the Aldrich side for this week. Let's move on to the next fight on the prelims here. So we have a welterweight matchup, and I think that this is going to be a pretty exciting matchup. Very good matchup between Jared Gooden and Kevin Jousset. Gooden's 23-9, and he is, coming off a win against Wellington Turman. Kevin Jousset is coming off 2 straight wins in the UFC. Looking at the odds right now, when I looked at this, Kevin Jousset was like a minus 240. Now he's a minus 214. So some dog action has been taken. And as you guys can see here, Gooden has been taken. People have been taking the Gooden dog odds, right? I tend to actually agree with that line movement. Even though I agree with that line movement, I will say that Kevin Jousset will still be my pick. I think that he has just enough of a skill set to defeat a guy like Gooden. And the reason why is, Gooden, he's had 2 stints in the UFC, right? And this is going to be his second stint. He's struggled with fighters who can either land more volume on the feet or control him on the ground and the grappling department. I see Jousset being able to implement both game plans due to his well-rounded skill set. Jousset actually comes from a judo background as a kid, and he's been training at City Kickboxing for the last few years, where he's been able to improve his stand-up. There will be reasons, why I'm not going to back Jousset, and the first one is that both of these men, they like to fight with their hands down. And I think that Gooden has the better boxing and the more powerful boxing to potentially catch Jousset here, who's a little bit more green in his stand-up. Second, Gooden, he's never been subbed in his career, and he has a major experience advantage here. I think that he has, at the moment, 32 career total fights compared to Jousset's 12 total fights. So I just think that, this is going to be Jousset via KO, but I wouldn't feel comfortable laying any kind of juice on Jousset or even play Gooden at dog odds. So I'm probably going to pass on this fight overall. Let's move on to the next fight on the prelims. We have Jake Hadley versus Charles Johnson. Now, Jake Hadley is 10-2. He's coming off that loss against Cody Durden. Charles Johnson, 14-6. He's coming off that come from behind victory against Azad Maxim. Looking at the odds for this fight, we have Jake Hadley at minus 160, open up at minus 145. I'm going to have to ride with Charles Energy Johnson here. I mean, I like him as a dog in this matchup. I believe that Johnson has the much better striking on the feet, in my opinion. I think he's going to be able to negate Hadley's below average takedown game. I mean, Hadley has a 25% takedown accuracy. Hadley does have some good Brazilian jiu-jitsu grappling. I just do not believe that he has enough takedowns to actually control Johnson or even to sub him, right? Hadley likes to go for the submissions, and I think Johnson does a good job of not being sub. I don't think he's ever been sub in his career. Johnson also should have some extra juice in this fight. I feel like, he's fighting in St. Louis. He either trains there or is from there. And I think this is going to lead to him starting out faster than usual. Johnson, he's struggled a lot with starting slow out the gates, and it's led to a lot of close decision fights or fights where he's down 2-0, going to the third round and the fight's over. So I think that he will have some extra juice here, and he's probably going to do a little bit better in the beginning. The over 2.5 actually is something that I actually like a little bit more. Both these men are pretty durable. Minus 260. I actually feel more comfortable playing the minus 260 over 2.5 than I do laying juice on Hadley or doing Charles Johnson plus 140. So yeah, give me Charles Johnson here, but I think the over 2.5 could be a good play. Johnson by decision also could be a good play. I mean, plus 200. I do see this fight going to distance here. Let's move on to the next fight. So up next, we have Trey Waters versus Billy Goff. Now, Trey Waters, Billy Goff, I think that this is going to be a very debatable fight throughout the week. Trey Waters is obviously 8-1. He's coming off of that win over Josh Quinlan. Billy Goff, 9-2. He's coming off of that a KO win against, I don't know who that is, some Japanese guy, Kinoshita. But he did ground pound him and, kind of beat him up there. Odds for this fight right now, Trey Waters minus 154, open up at plus 130. Yeah, I have to go with the Trey Waters side here. I mean, Trey Waters, he really impressed me with that matchup with Josh Quinlan. I mean, he came in a short notice and he beat Josh Quinlan up on the feet. And I think that he showed me that he was very comfortable fighting inside the pocket and outside the pocket. This guy's a sniper. Trey Waters is definitely a sniper. He's 6'5", 77-inch reach, very big for a welterweight. I do think that Waters keeps his hands a little low, but he counteracts that by using good head movement, and he's pretty accurate with his strikes. And I think that's going to be a problem for a fighter like Goff. I mean, Goff, he really loves to just move forward, pressure, all offense, and he just doesn't have a good striking defense. So I think that this should lead to Waters just being able to pick him apart on the feet. Goff does have the grappling upside here. So I think that that'll be his best path to victory because he is a good grappler, good wrestler. I just think that Trey Waters' 77% takedown defense will be enough. And even if he gets to the ground, I like Waters having enough of a submission game with his guillotines and his chokes to be able to keep up with the danger that Goff possesses. So give me Trey Waters here. I think he's actually a pretty good money line play. I mean, looking at the odds right now, minus 154. I think that's not bad. Pick here is going to be Waters via KO. Let's move on to the next fight. So up next, we have Tabatha Ricci versus Tecia Torres. Tabatha Ricci, 9-2. She's coming off a split decision loss to Lupita Godinez. I thought that was a pretty clear loss, but somehow they gave her a split. Tecia Torres, 13-6, coming off 2-year layoff and having a baby. And her last fight was 2 years ago against Mackenzie Dern, where she lost a split decision. Let's look at the odds for this fight. So we have Tabatha Ricci at minus 130. Open up as a dog at plus 145. Yeah, I got to go with the younger and more active fighter here in Tabatha Ricci. She's been fighting a lot more actively in the last few years. I think this is going to be a pretty close fight. Both women have pretty similar physical dimensions, as you guys can see here. I just think that, coming off a 2-year layoff for Torres, having a baby, I think that's just one too many variables for me to actually play her as a dog. She did have some legit wins when she was a active fighter. She lost to only the best via decision, but I feel like Torres is going to come in a little rusty, in the stand-up game, especially 2 years off. I think that she's going to have to get the timing and the rhythm down. And I feel like this is going to be a tune-up fight for her on the feet. And in the grappling side, I feel like Ricci's just the better grappler here. She has the judo game to take her down. She has the jiu-jitsu game to potentially sub her, control her. I just don't think that Torres's 61% takedown defense will be enough to stop her from getting taken down this fight. So I like Ricci here as the more active fighter and having the grappling upside here. Ricci via decision is the play for me, and I think that's a potentially solid money line play, minus 130 right now. So I think those are some good odds. Let's move on to the next fight here. So we have Terrance McKinney versus Esteban Ribovics, and this is going to be a pretty exciting fight for as long as it lasts. I mean, McKinney's 15-6. He's coming off of 2 KO wins over 2 people that are not in the UFC anymore. Ribovics 12-1. He's coming off that win over Kamela Kirk. Let's look at the odds for this fight. Ribovics is minus 160, opened up at minus 170. So he was at one point minus 250, but some dog action has been taken on Terrance McKinney. I think that Terrance McKinney, he's just going to be a little bit more boom or bust, and too much boom or bust for me to actually back him as a dog. I mean, I'm leading Ribovics in this fight. I think Ribovics is just going to be the more dependable fighter with better cardio, and he has a better finishing equity against a first round boom or bust fighter like Terrance McKinney. McKinney, he is very dangerous in that first round. I'll give him that. But I just feel like Ribovics, we've seen how durable this guy is. We've seen how dangerous he can be in later rounds. I feel like he's going to be well versed enough on the feet and in grappling exchanges to survive that Terrance McKinney onslaught in the first round. And let's say that we can, I think the live play is actually a better play on Ribovics. We could get some dog odds on Ribovics, kind of similar to how Nazim Sadikov was probably a dog after, McKinney dominated him in the first round. So I think Ribovics is going to be the play here for me. Ribovics via KO. Terrance McKinney is pretty chinny, right? So he's not the most durable guy himself. I would probably play Ribovics after round 1, just so we can save ourselves from staying safe from the potential McKinney first round finish, right? So a good play here could be even McKinney, first round finish, playing that, and then if that doesn't work, we can live play Ribovics. So yeah, Ribovics via KO is going to be my pick here. Let's move on to the next fight on the prelims. So we have this is going to be another debatable fight because it means obviously striker versus grappler here. We have Chase Hooper versus Borshchev. Now Chase Hooper 13-3-1. He's coming off 2 straight wins in the UFC. Borshchev, or Slava Claus, like I like to say, 7-3-1. He's coming off that draw against Nazim Sadikov, who I mentioned earlier. Odds for this fight right now: Borshchev minus 155, opened up at minus 145. Man, I gotta go Slava Claus here. I think that this is gonna be there's gonna be a lot of different directions to play this fight. I think there's gonna be a lot of thoughts on this fight overall on social media, obviously. I just have to go Slava Claus here. I mean, I just do not trust Chase Hooper's striking and takedown game coming off of 2 advantageous matchups in Jordan Levitt and Nick Fiore. I do think that Chase Hooper should be in lightweight. That's a good weight class for him. But I just don't think that it's going to be enough to fight a guy like Borshchev, who's a killer kickboxer. I mean, Borshchev also has that dog in him. If you watch that last fight with Nazim Sadikov, he was getting dropped and he just came back. I really like the heart that he brings. He does have a 36% takedown defense. That's pretty bad, but I like the fact that he's always likes to work back up ASAP, right? And he likes to get back on his feet as soon as possible. So The last time Chase Hooper fought a stand-up killer was when he was embarrassed and just KO'd by Steve Garcia like 5 times in that fight. And I just see a similar KO finish here. So Borshchev via KO is going to be the pick for me. I actually think he's a solid money line playing minus 155. I'm on the Borshchev side this week. Let's move on to the next fight on the prelims. Well, actually, it's not the prelims, it's the main card now. So we're doing pretty good on time. Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus Robelis Despaigne. Now, Waldo Cortes-Acosta, 11-1. It's coming off 2 straight wins in the UFC. Robelis Despaigne, 5-0. Obviously, this guy is all of his fights end in the first round within like the first minute or so. Let's look at the odds for this fight. We have Despaigne at minus 204. Open up at a minus 240. So some dog action has been taken on Waldo Cortes-Acosta. I have to go Despaigne here. I'm not sure where the love is for Waldo Cortes-Acosta. I mean, there has been some dog action taken on him, so but I don't really understand that. And I feel like here's another thing. Despaigne, I feel like everyone's on Despaigne this week. Like 91% of the Tapology picks are on Despaigne to win. It worries me a little bit, but even factoring that in, I've been looking to fade Cortes-Acosta since his last performance against Arlovski. Cortes-Acosta closed as a minus 825 in that fight, and he ended up winning a close decision fight, 29-28, against a pretty washed Arlovski. I just don't believe that at any point in the fight, Cortes-Acosta showed that he was a minus 825 favorite. He is somewhat durable, Cortes-Acosta, and he's 4-1 in the UFC, so major props there, but his level of competition just has not been that stellar, in my opinion. And I think that Despaigne, if you guys just watched that last fight, he just dispatched Josh Parisian in like 18 seconds. And I feel that, you know, I feel like a guy like Parisian Cortes-Acosta would have potentially gone to decision against. I mean, he's gone to decision against the likes of Jared Verdera, Chase Sherman, and a 45-year-old Andrei Arlovski. So I got to go to Spain via KO here. I like him as a solid play at minus 204, potentially even a parlay piece. It is a little trappy because some people have taken the dog action on Cortes-Acosta, so I may be missing something. But for now, I think that Despaigne is pretty solid. Let's look at the next fight on the main card. So we have Alex Caceres versus Sean Woodson here. Now, Caceres and Woodson, both these guys are kind of lanky, right? I mean, 21-14 for Caceres coming off a loss against Giga Chikadze. Sean Woodson, 11-1-1 coming off a split decision win over Charles Jourdain. Look at the odds for this fight right now. We have Woodson at minus 195, open up at a pick'em minus 110. I have to go with Sean Woodson here. I'm leaning towards him. I'm probably not going to play him. I think that Woodson has the better boxing. He's shown improvement in his grappling in last few fights. I will just ultimately pass on Woodson, like I mentioned, for a couple of reasons. First, Sean Woodson, he struggled in the past against fighters that have come close to matching his height or his length and his reach, right? And I've seen, look at the fight with Luis Saldana against Sean Woodson. Luis pretty much won that fight, but he just had some horrible low IQ decisions. And Sean Woodson was subbed by Julian Erosa. Second is that while I believe Caceres is maybe a bit washed on the physicality stage at age 35, he has enough of a well-rounded game and on the ground and on the feet that could give Woodson some issues. So I could see this being a close decision fight and potentially a split decision, like Sean Woodson's last win over Charles Jourdain. So pick here is going to be Sean Woodson via decision, but I'm probably going to stay away from this one. Although I will be rooting for him because I think Sean Woodson's from St. Louis, and the home crowd would obviously be behind him here. Let's move on to the next fight on the prelims. The main card, sorry. So Diego Ferreira versus Mateusz Rębecki. Right now, Diego Ferreira, he's coming off of a win over Michael Johnson, 18-5. Rębecki, 19-1. He's coming off a win against Roosevelt Roberts, submission armbar. Odds right now, Rębecki's a minus 400, opened up at a minus 250. Honestly, kind of Mad that I missed that boat there. Yeah, I think that Rębecki, I like Rębecki here in this fight. I do think that the odds are getting a bit wide now at minus 400, to be honest. But I think that this is going to be a good test to see how good Rębecki is, right? Because if he can beat Diego Ferreira, he's most likely on the verge of being a ranked fighter, or, very close to being a ranked fighter. Ferreira is 39 years old. I mean, his last win was over a 37-year-old Michael Johnson, who's very inconsistent. I think if you guys watched that fight, Ferreira wasn't looking that great against Michael Johnson. I think Michael Johnson was beating him on the feet. And then Diego Ferreira just landed a nice overhand bomb, and that put out Michael Johnson right away. You know, before that fight, Ferreira was coming off a year and a half layoff that included injury. And Ferreira also has lost to grapplers, wrestlers before. Granted, they have been the elite ranked fighters like Mateusz Gamrot, Beneil Dariush, even Gregor Gillespie, who, back in the day, he was a ranked fighter when he fought Diego Ferreira. I believe that Ferreira just being 39 with long layoffs are just too many red flags in this matchup with a relentless forward pressure grappler and wrestler like Rębecki. Aside from the wrestling upside, Rębecki has shown me some decent striking. I think he has some good power, some really heavy leg kicks. I most likely will now pass on this fight just because minus 400 is a bit steep. I mean, but we just, like, for example, we just saw Rębecki take Nick Fiore to a decision like a year and a half ago. So, that still is something that's in my mind, but I'm going to say Rębecki via decision. I'm just going to pass for now, though, because I think minus 400 is a little steep for this matchup. Let's look at the next fight on the main card. So next fight that we have here, Alonzo Menenfield versus Carlos Oberg. Alonzo, Atomic Menenfield, 15-3-1. He's coming off 2 straight wins in the UFC. Carlos Oberg, 9-1. He's coming off of 5 straight wins. So this guy's been looking really good. Let's look at the odds for this fight. We have Carlos Oberg as minus 265, opened up at a minus 325. So some dog action has been taken on Alonzo Menenfield here. I have to go Carlos Oberg here. I just like him in this matchup, right? And, I think that Menenfield has the dangerous fight-ending power on the feet. And he's also a pretty underrated grappler, in my opinion. But I just believe that Oberg will be too technical and dangerous on the feet for a guy like Menenfield. Menenfield has been in a few matchups that have been really advantageous to him. I mean, since his last loss against William Knight, which is not a good sign. He's been fighting mainly grapplers who he's been able to just piece up on the feet, like a Jimmy Crute, or kickboxers who just have little power, like a Dustin Jacoby. I think Oberg is slick enough in kickboxing at light heavyweight, and he just has the fight-ending power to go along with it. So it could get interesting. I mean, if Menenfield decides to grapple, I do think that he's an underrated grappler, but I like Oberg's 75% takedown defense to help him stay on his feet. And yeah, I just see Oberg taking Menenfield's 11th rank in the light heavyweight rankings with a KO win. So give me Oberg via KO. I think that he's a parlay piece at minus 265 personally. So yeah, I like Carlos Oberg here. Let's look at the next fight on the main card. We're going to go into the co-main event now. And obviously this is going to be Joaquin Buckley versus Nursultan Ruziboyev. Buckley obviously asked for this, right? He wanted to be on the main card, maybe main event even for St. Louis because he's from there. New Mansa, Buckley, 18-6, 3-1, 3-2 in his last 5. He's coming off of that KO win over Vicente Luque to take the rank from Luque. Nursultan Ruziboyev, 34-8-2. He's 5-0 in his last 5. He's dropping down to 170 for this matchup. Let's look at the odds for this fight right now. We have Buckley at minus 156, open up at minus 150, so not a lot of movement has been happening either way. I'm going to go with Buckley here. I'm going to lean towards him. I think that this fight just has one too many variables for me and just really could go in different directions to where I'm not going to probably play it. I mean, Ruziboyev is dropping down from 185 to 170 for this matchup. We have limited data on how he will perform at 170 in the UFC, but I feel like I've seen somewhere on social media where he was like all 8 of his losses were from the 170-pound division. So I need to confirm that, but that's not a good sign. I think, Buckley, he's looked fantastic at 170 since dropping down from 185, and he's proven that he is a top 10 level fighter in that division. I'm just going to pass on this just because Buckley's, loss against Nasruddin Imavov is something that's staying in my mind in this matchup. I mean, it showed me how much he can struggle against a fighter that is taller than him and has a potential grappling advantage over him. I think that Imavov's obviously a much better fighter than Nursultan Ribovics. I mean, he has much better movement, much better striking, but Buckley is still 5'10", going up against a 6'5" Nursultan. I mean, and Nursultan, he came into the UFC known as a grappler, so I think that that's going to give me some pause. Second reason, Ribovics could be at a major skill and speed disadvantage, right, by dropping down to 170, as I think the lighter weight classes, they just have a little bit more skill than the heavier weight classes. So this is going to be just too many variables for me to confident play units on anything. So I'm going to pass. I'm going to say Buckley via decision, but I'm going to pass on this fight for now. Let's look at the main event for the evening. So we have Derrick Lewis versus Rodrigo Nascimento. Derrick Lewis, 27-12. He's coming off of the loss against Jailton Almeida, where he was just held down the whole time. Rodrigo Nascimento, 11-1. He's coming off that win over Dontel Mays for the second time. I think that was the second time they fought. Derrick Lewis, 155, minus 155 favorite. Open up at a pick'em at minus 110. I tend to agree with that line movement. Yeah, I am liking Derrick Lewis in this main event. Nascimento, there's just something about this guy that gives me some fraud vibes. I feel that he's coming off a decision win over Dontel Mays, had 2 split decision wins over Tanner Boser and Ilir Latifi, which is like some red flags for me. I just don't believe that Nascimento has enough power to threaten Lewis on the feet, and his grappling ground game just does not impress me enough to make me believe that he will sub Lewis on the ground. So at best, I feel like Nascimento is going to hope for some lay and pray or some cage push for like 25 minutes. And I think that Lewis should just be able to get back up on his feet, right? He always likes to just stand up and just find Nascimento's chin at some point, similar to how Chris Dawkins KO'd Nascimento, which is another red flag for me. So give me Lewis via KO. I will monitor the line movement this week to see if we get closer to pick 'em odds, but it seems like people are liking Derrick Lewis this week, so I don't think we're gonna get better value there. That about does it for the breakdown for UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Nascimento in St. Louis. Once again, I think this is going to be a fantastic card. Please, guys, like, comment, subscribe for the algorithm. PurePicks.gg is the website to sign up for our Discord, where we release all of our picks, all of our thoughts and insights and analysis. Really appreciate the support so far. Coming off a good UFC 301, and we're going to look to continue that momentum going forward. I'm James, and we're out here at Pure Picks.